Fáilte Nash Grí Shrahadó de Comhrá Le Tomás, I gcór le EIRGRID. Be mesaí le daoine cáiliúil ón Cumann Lú Clascail agus tá súlagam go minic sibh tanamhat.
I remember saying to him, this is some trip, Sean Murray. This is unbelievable. He says, it's not a trip, Mugsy, it's a tour. And I was like, no, but you know what I mean? He says, no, I don't.
So proud there again, D&G, who're they again, D&G, Dalshin Cavanagh. Yeah, tis LNG anyway, Larry and Galvin anyway, that's the brand name anyway.
This season, the show is brought to you by EIRGRID, official timing sponsors of the GAA All-Ireland Hurling and Football Championship, and key drivers in Ireland's pursuit of a cleaner energy future. Agus fáilte roibhsteach Grí Comhrá Le Tomás for another episode of Comhrá Le Tomás in association with EIRGRID. Delighted and honoured to have the great John Jackson Kiely with me this week. He of Waterford fame, a great GA man, and looking forward to the chat. John, tá fáilte rót.
Thank you, Tomás.
I might as well hit it hard early, John. Kilrossenty, they're green and gold. Yeah. Will you tell me the truth? Did Kerry copy?
Yeah, you're wearing all jerseys.
Yeah, I was just going to ask it. Did Kilrossenty copy Kerry, or did Kerry copy?
Well, actually, what happened was in 04 when Kerry won their first All-Ireland. They also won it, by the way, in 1905 as well. But there was a man who all these people came from this parish, Roddy Kerman. He was a star athlete of the day. He won umpteen Munster championships in the high hurdles, 400-meter hurls. He won rowing events in Hendley and the regatta in Hendley, and he was one of the outstanding Kerry footballers of that time. He emigrated, I think it was Castle Island. It was the bank in Castle Island. He worked in the bank in Castle Island, and he was on the Kerry team, as I said, in 04. And I'm wrong about 04, 03 and 04, 03 and 04. 03 they won it. I think they had 2 or 3 games at Kildare that year to win it. But anyway, he played between draws and replays. He played in 5 All-Irelands. He had the Kilrossenty jersey. I think Clane represented Kildare in the 03 final, and there was some debate about the jerseys. And he had the Kilrossenty jersey, which was green and gold. And the Kerry chairman at the time thought that was a good one because there was a bit of rivalry. Well, obviously, there's always been good rivalry among the clubs in Kerry, as you have the captain coming from the champion club in Kerry, and the champion club's colours was on the Kerry representatives, obviously, at the time. So they decided to get a set of jerseys in those colours in 03. And we have it in writings. There's a fellow that was presented to the Kilrossenty Club in 1887. The border of shamrock surrounding the tower, the round tower, the harp and the Irish wolfhound. And you wore that, Tomás, on your jersey for many years until a few years back when you had to change it. So that was actually presented to the Kilrossenty Club in 1887. So that is your crest. So that is the big connection between the two clubs. So Roddy Kerman bought the colours there, and he started and won 2 All-Irelands for Kerry and played a huge part in them because he was an outstanding player. He was on that great team that included the legendary Dick Fitzgerald, who won 5 All-Irelands with Kerry, the famous stadium in Killarney named after him, Maurice McCarthy, and of course the great Austin Stack, after whom the pitch in Tally is named. That's where it all began.
You would have a fierce interest, Jackson, in Kerry football, wouldn't you? What do you say when you cross the border every time?
Well, every time when we cross the border from Cork and we're going in and we see this sign, "Welcome to Kerry," I say to the lads, "God, lads, it's great to be going home." Yeah, it is, and we have it here. It's a beautiful old parish here. We have the Comhrá Mountains, and like I was saying, we have the Greenway, and we have the waterfalls. There's lots of, it's a place to be proud of. And of course, we have a huge football tradition. We won our first championship in 1888. We played in the first Munster championship that was played that year, even though there was no All-Ireland played that year. But we took Boher Crow, I think, to a few Foppel Pines, and they actually won the All-Ireland the following year. So right from the very beginning, we've been ever present. And the football is the big game here. Always has been, always. I hope it always will be.
Yeah, I was just going to say there are pockets of Waterford no more than it would be described as a hurling county, but there'd be no more than Kerry, where there are places in Kerry where they'll play hurling and no football. It's the same in Waterford, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, right here where we are, a bit between north of us, north of the mountain, you have South Tipperary comes in there, obviously, and between us and the sea is the club called Stradbally, and they obviously, they wear the red jerseys, the same as Cork, so it's a huge rivalry with those over many years as well, you know. But our history is better than theirs. They didn't win their first title until about 1940. Yeah, I think they won that well. So we have that one on them. We've been there, you know. But since around the 1930s, we've been deadly rivals. Then we have Rathgarmick to the east, also in the Comhrá Mountains, also deadly rivals, and the Noir between us and South Tipperary. So that's a great pocket. All good football clubs.
I went to college. I used to meet a fella from the Nair every Friday morning above in Limerick, and we'd go and the two of us inter-county footballers at the time, you were probably in charge of them at the time, Brian Wall, and the two of us would meet every Friday morning for a fry in Limerick. Yes. I don't know, it wasn't the diet. I'd say you had him on a strict diet that time, John.
Well, we had no dietitians. I was the dietitian. But Brian Wall was very good, yeah. Brian Wall, a lovely fella, yeah. And he gave great service to the county. He actually was quite a good hurler. He played senior championship for the county, you know, but an excellent footballer. His dad won a Railway Cup in Munster at full back in 1972 with John O'Connell and Mick O'Connell and those guys, you know.
Who were the, I was just going to say it, who were the big footballers at the time when you were growing up? John,
when I was growing up, everybody's hero was the legendary Mick O'Connell. Marvellous player. And
you saw him plenty of times in the flesh.
I did. And what was so unique about him was the way he was able to get up so high from a standing position, you know, and hang in the air for the ball. And also his legendary kicking and free taking. Like the guy had everything, and he was just brilliant. And we got him to come to Lemmy Bryan to a football. Himself and Pop Fitzgerald's Morris's father.
Yeah.
Brought him to Lemmy Bryan back in about, I think, 92. Yeah, it was 1992, because we were having a celebration of an old team, and the two lads came down for the celebration. But I arranged a football session in the field. We had a junior team at the time, a fairly good junior team, and with a senior team. And I was interested in trying to get Miko to show the boys the proper way to kick a football, the proper way to fetch it, catch it, and all that kind of thing. But of course, when Miko togged out and came out in the field, all he wanted to do was play the game himself. So he just didn't have the patience to show guys, you know. And then he says to me, John, he said, we'll have a game. And he said, I'll go and goal for one team. So we had a junior team versus the senior team. And I put Mick in the goal in the junior team. So we went to Crotty's pub after, and we had a good old night up there. And a good friend of mine, Harry Quinn, who played for the county, had the unenviable job of marking Bomber Liston in the Munster Championship game that she played against Waterford and Dungarvan in 1987. It was a great game. But anyway, Harry said to me, Jackson, you must be the worst selector in the history of the club. And I said, why? He said, you put the greatest footballer of all time in the goal. How could you do that? Because Nico was in goal, and he kicking out the ball, and he was shouting orders at every, you know, the guys up in the field. And every time he'd lob it straight to the midfield or the wing back or whatever. He was deadly accurate with the kicks.
I always kind of think there isn't enough footage of old games. And I know that Croke Park, it's one thing that I never understand. Croke Park have a vault of all the football old matches. I'd love to have access to them, and I'd love to see the old games and the old Kerry teams playing at the time. Was the football tough, hard, physical at the time? And how did O'Connell? I know fellas would say he didn't mix it, but he had to be able to mind himself.
Yeah, but he was so athletic, Tomás. You know what I mean? He was just one of these guys that seemed to be. I think the hallmark of a great player. You'd often hear a guy saying, geez, he got an awful lot of time on the ball. But good players always seem to get time. The same way with soccer. You see Modric there for Real Madrid. He seems to have all night on the ball. And he passes the ball perfectly. And even he's only a little light guy. Mick O'Connell was similar in Gaelic football. The man was just He was just a genius. His kick passing was brilliant. He would put the right weight on the ball. He was light years ahead of his time.
Were you always, John, were you always involved in management? I suppose with starting with the club, obviously, but were you always involved at some level? And how did you start in it? And how did it evolve?
I started with the club. I started with the club and with minor teams and up along, and then the county board chairman at the time I had been involved a few times with a guy called Greg Fives, who was a great character.
Oh yeah.
He was over the senior team around in the 1990s and even before that. And I done a few stints with him, and we had some great fun traveling around the country because Greg was a great character. But I got involved with the junior team in 1999, and we won the All-Ireland that year. We beat Meath in the final. And the reason we did beat Meath in the final is because we had the rules suited Waterford. You could play your second best team. Guys who hadn't played senior, we'll say in 98, could play on the junior team in 99. But we had a small Pat Welch who played senior hurling for the county, but was an outstanding footballer. And we had him at centre back, and we had Niall Geary, who played from Nemo. I think he captained Nemo to win a Cork championship.
I know him well, yeah.
Nemo Geary also played for Munster, and on the other side then we had Alan Reynolds, who was an outstanding soccer player. And Alan Reynolds was a great kick passer of the ball, and we had small Paddy centre back who was the real man to cover across the line. If there was a weakness on the right or the left, he was able to cover across. And of course, Geary was outstanding and real. A minor version of Tomás Ó'Sé on the other side.
If I'm not mistaken, Geary gave Canavan enough of it in a Railway Cup match at some stage.
Oh, he did, yeah. Geary was a good
tough.
Man. He was a tough man, yeah. He'd have a lot of he'd be kind of well connected in the GA world. The O'Loughlin.
He has Dinny Allen minding him now, John, isn't he?
Dinny Allen's, yeah. Well, that's what they're saying. His children now are connected to Jimmy Ballymurphy, Dinny Allen, and himself and the O'Loughlin. So there's a good breed coming through there, Tomás.
There is, but that time, John, you had to. I know you say that you were allowed to play your second team. Kerry would always have had good junior teams. Cork would always have had good junior teams. So to achieve an All-Ireland that time was huge for Waterford, yeah?
Well, it was, yeah. Well, we got out of Munster. We beat Cork in the semi-final, and it kind of fell into place a bit after that. There was a few more good guys came on board, and we beat Clare in the Munster final. We had a tremendous game against a very good Roscommon team up in Portlaoise in the semi-final, and the All-Ireland final. We beat Meath. I remember the score was 2-12 to 2-11. And the funny story in that one is I had a nephew playing full forward, a guy called Jack O'Keely. He was very fast and he was a good player. But the Meath keeper decided he'd take a shot kick out after we equalised. He wanted to begin to move maybe to what in his opinion might start a match-winning move. But the ball went out over the line right in front of the stand in O'Moore Park. And Jack O'Keely had run over, and I said to Jack, kick that bloody thing wide now. I said, and we'll kick the living stuff out of them in the replay, No, he said, look at David Ryan. And he kicked the ball across to David Ryan, who was the cornerback who had come forward. And David took a few steps and kicked the side over the bar for the winner. And of course, afterwards, when we'd won the All-Ireland, the guys were looking up to me and they were saying, Jackson, geez, you're a genius, lad. How did you pick out that? I told him the exact opposite, but that's the way it is.
I was told you had great celebrations after that, John, and you were up on a trailer. Did a man have an accident?
We were up on an open top bus, yeah, going into the square in Dungarvan. And one of the guys, a chap, a good player too, and he's a very good player, a guy called Stewkey Power. Stewkey was booze. And he said to me, Jackson, I think I'm Superman. I had an awful job to stop him from jumping off the top of the bus. But we had good celebrations. So we won that thing again in 2004. We beat a very good Cork team in 2004 in the Munster final. The Cork team did Alan Quirk, who won an All-Star. I think Mick O'Connell was actually only come on as a sub in that. And the boy from Ballygarvan that won an All-Star, Just Spillane was centre back on it. Johnny Hayes from Rosscarbery was on it. You know, so they had quite a good team. And we beat them in a very, very good Munster final. And we went on to win the All-Ireland then that year as well. So, and after that then I progressed on to the senior team in 2005. And I remember in our first game in Dungarvan, in a league game in Dungarvan, we played Cavan. But as we were only setting out and the panel was only small, we had only about 17 or 18 on the panel. I was trying to get guys to come on board. They were all disillusioned, you know. After the previous year, they had got some awful hammerings the year before. And I was trying to get good guys to come on board. But Cavan were kicking goals for fun in Dungarvan. I remember Jason Riley probably got 3 or 4 and Shawnee Johnson got a few more, you know. It was like, I think the final score ended up something like maybe 7-15 to 8 points. They beat us by about 28 points. But after that, I got a few good guys on board and we put up a very good performance against Derry down in Welsh Park. We played a few more teams we didn't do too bad. And we had a good game with John Kennedy, former Kerry footballer, was the manager of Clare. We had a very good game with them above Minster, the championship. So the following year then we had a few up and down results in the league, but we ended up, to make a long story short, we ended up playing Cavan in our last league game. Cavan were 50-1 on. All they had to do was beat poor lowly Waterford. And we decided anyway, we travelled by car up to the mountain rather than going on a bus. It was the last league game. We were down about, you know, 12 from the bottom or whatever. We were just more or less we were just playing for pride or whatever. So we decided we'd travel by car and we'd all meet at the Butchie Still. And the boys had that dietitian food, you know, the stuff that you like, the
pasta.
Yeah, pasta. Yeah. So we all headed up anyway. So a few of the boys went to the shop. There was no shop outside the entrance going in, and they got Mars bars and bottles of orange and crisps and stuff like that. So somebody from the Cavan setup had seen this going on, you know. And the Cavan chairman says to me, you know, when are the team coming? I said, that's the team. So he thought we were joking. He said, that's not. I said, that's the team. Yeah, that's it. I said, there's only about 18 or 19 of us here. But you see, on the way up, one of the selectors and myself from the car, a guy called Tom Condon, and another guy called Paddy Welsh, God rest him, he was in the county board. And the previous year, we were like, as I said, we were only starting out. The defence, the full back line especially, they were like hitting ducks. So there was an awful lot of space between the two lines. So I said to Tom going up, we have 2 guys now at corner forward. Jason Ryan, who went on, you know Jason Ryan, he went on to be manager of Wexford and Kildare, and quite a good guy, and he was very interested in the tactics, and he used to stay back after training and do free taking drills as well, you know. So I said, we'll get Jason. Jason is a good engine. We'll get Jason to be a sweeper. We'll put him in that area between the 2 lines, because they're going to pop the ball in front of Shawnee Johnson and Young Riley in the other corner, and we'll be like sitting ducks. Now, we already had in Shane Briggs and a guy called Damon Welsh, we already had 2 solid cornerbacks anyway. So he said to me, why not bring back Stephen Cunningham as well? And we'll put 2 guys in there. So we had 2 intelligent guys. We put them back in the box. And Cavan were popping the ball in front of the 2 guys, but the area was congested. So I suppose we started off something like a kind of a blanket defence.
I was just going to say it, John. You probably started the defensive football ahead of
we frustrated Cavan, yeah, and we ended up getting some mighty scores. We had a big guy full forward called Gary Honey. There was a bit of it wasn't just the 2 boys came out all right, with Gary Honey, one operator, and they had 2 guys on him, and we had Limo Lenan and a real speed merchant in the half forward line to carry the ball and get the ball in. Every ball was to be kicked in on top of Honey, and every ball was kicked in on top of Honey. They fouled Honey, and we got a good few frees. But we had a guy called Carl O'Keefe who kicked some amazing points the same day as well. We ended up beating him by a few points, and it was a huge shock. And by us beating Cavan, they failed to be promoted. So the result was Westmeath were promoted. So I had the county board chairman from Westmeath on to me. He wanted to make me a free man of Mullingar or at loan or someplace.
Somebody told me that in the match program, it was written that it would have been the biggest disaster since the Titanic if Cavan were beaten that day. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. Yeah, it's the biggest disaster since the sinking of the Titanic in 1912 or whatever. Yeah, 1912. Yeah. So that was the motivational speech in the dressing room. They also referred to our goals against, you know, our goals against. So they said that our score line, that our defensive record would look an awful lot worse by Sunday evening in Breffni Park, you know. So it took. I've heard experts in Cavan and other areas and also say it took Cavan an awful long time to recover from that defeat, you know. But that wasn't if we went to we played a few challenge games after that, and then we went to Kerry and played G above in Killarney in a Munster semi-final, and you beat us 16 points to 8. And I remember in that game we had a penalty, and your keeper saved it. But I think
it was a wet day, John.
It was a wettish day, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember saying to the lads before the match, guys were coming in and out and saying, it's wet. And I said, Fitzgerald Stadium is the greatest football pitch in the country. That'll be perfect. Don't worry about that. If you can't play football here, you can't play football anywhere. And we played the same tactics against you that day. The result was, I think Michael Frank and Gooch were the two corner fouls. But you weren't firing well. It was after that you brought Starr from midfield to full forward. Actually, he had a mighty game that day against us in midfield, himself and Dara, the two of them. We couldn't get to grips with the two of them in the middle of the field. But our defence played well.
Was it hard, John? Was it hard? And I'm just thinking now, and I don't mean this in any say, would it be hard? I always think like it was easy for teams if you were up the top end and if you were playing for a Dublin or whatever, to be easy, get fellas to motivate them, and it'd be easy. You'd have a list of fellas that you could turn away and you could do this. Was it hard every year to start the year to see who you had and who wanted to play with Waterford?
Well, Tomás, the problem is, you see, you always in this county, you have guys that are really good at both codes, you know, and you'd love to have a few. Shane Welch, for instance, now was a super footballer.
Yeah.
But we couldn't have him. We only had him at the end there in 09, you know.
He was brilliant. I actually played against him in club with Nemo and the Munster club. He was outstanding. He was after playing.
Hardy fella, yeah. Good player. Scored a winning goal against Kerry in 2003 in the Munster under-21 football final down in Welsh Park. And that was a good Kerry team as well, you know. And he himself and the Brick Welch, who was a famous holder as well. Like the Brick Welch was a super footballer.
Yeah.
You know, there's 4, you know, and them guys would be they'd have leadership qualities, you know. But on that team from 06 to 09, I heard there was 5 or 6 lads there that had leadership qualities, and there was a lot of enthusiastic lads there. And, you know, like I said to the boys, we're not going to win Munster, we're not going to win. We were always realistic, but we're going to enjoy it. If we're going to Sligo, lads, we'll head off. We'll head off the night before and we'll stay there and we'll have a bit of a crack and we'll enjoy it. We're going to play football. But we'll you know. And that's it. Like I can look back on it, I can say I enjoyed the bloody thing anyway, you know. And I'd say all the boys I meet, a lot of them since, and they're always some story about something that happened. Like we were up playing Antrim, and we stayed in the Carrickdale Hotel there on the border.
I know it.
And we had this kit man. He's actually the man who looks after the scoreboard in the Fraher Field. He's a gas character. Ollie Drummy is his name. And Ollie loves a few pints and having a bit of a crack. So we used to bring him off on the bus on the away games, and he was down as the kit man. So he was really dressed up to kill now this time. He had a blazer on him. He looked well, but he was a spitting image of a guy called Martin Cullen. Do you remember him? He was a Waterford political figure, a minister. Okay. Got into a bit of trouble over those voting machines, and some woman that was paid an awful lot of money. But I had a character on the backroom team, a guy called Paco Curran. And Paco put up a request for the Waterford football team. There was music going on in the bar, you know. A request for the Waterford football team who were going up playing Antrim. And especially their number one supporter, Minister Martin Cullen, who's staying with him tonight. Everybody in the place was looking around for Martin Cullen. Paco said to me, "Now, Jackson, the biggest trouble is you can't have anybody talking to Martin Cullen, because the minute this guy will open his mouth, they know he's not Martin Cullen. But eventually, this very large lady came up to Ollie. Ollie's a small guy, only about maybe 5'4" or 5, and she was looking down at him, and she says, "Bleeding hell, Minister," she said, "what could I do for you for all that money you gave that other woman?" And he looked up at her and he said, "Be God, ma'am, you could do a lot."
But you wouldn't mind, John,
yeah.
the night before a game, you wouldn't mind a few lads. No, we were never offered it, because I'd say if we were offered to have a few pints before a game, we wouldn't be seen for a couple of days. But you didn't mind the boys having a pint or two the night before a game?
Well, the most of them, to be fair now, an awful lot of the guys wouldn't have it, but there was a few guys that a few pints wouldn't, would go down with Canada. Yeah. Well, the night of the game where you would have a few pints, yeah. But
yeah, there was a quote, and you're a great man for the quotes. And a fella, I was saying to a fella today that I was doing an interview with you later on, and he said that one of the great quotes was, "Once upon a time there, when maybe you shouldn't have been beaten by London, you were, and you were coming back at the airport, and somebody said to you, 'Jesus, you should be ashamed of yourselves getting beaten by London.' And you turned around and you says, 'Do you realise the pick they have? They have a pick of 9 million people. Sure, how can you compete with that?'"
Sorry, Chair. Actually, I think it's probably more than 9 million. Yeah, but there was a lot of we had a lot of problems that time. We had the Garmin twins that played with you on the Munster Railway Cup. So I remember when we won that Railway Cup. Actually, I was involved with Munster there for 4 years, and I enjoyed that as well. That was a great bit. It's a pity,
John, that competition is gone now, because we were talking about it the other day, and I'm delighted. I'm proud of the fact I have that medal, because of so many fellas that played with Munster, and the respect that the Railway Cup had. And it was my only chance of getting one, and we didn't play often enough with Munster through club or through whatnot. But it's a brilliant competition. And do you think that the GAA, between Sigerson, between everything, that it's too big? A competition like that, it's a pity that it died.
It's an awful pity, yeah. And it gave, from counties like, we'd say in Munster, counties like Waterford, Tipperary and Limerick and Clare, the better players in those, it gave them a chance to be involved with people like yourself and the top players in Kerry and the top players in Cork. That's just Munster. You had the same story in Leinster and Connacht and all the other provinces. And I since I'm going back as a kid back in the 60s, and I remember them great Ulster teams with the top players from Down and Cavan. And geez, you'd be looking forward to Patrick's Day and seeing the hurling final and the football final, the Railway Cup. It was one of the highlights of the year. It was great to see all these great players playing,
And who were the managers when you were involved then? Who were the...
Well, with the other counties. Well,
with Munster that time. Say, was it Gerard Sullivan that was in charge a year?
Gerard Sullivan, yeah, and Gerard O'Keefe from Kerry was.
He was selected there as well, yeah.
Johnny Owens. Johnny was representing Tipperary, and there was a Johnny Cummins. He was representing. I think he was representing Limerick. He was, yeah. Johnny was representing Limerick, and I was obviously in it from Waterford. So we had that was a good idea. And there was somebody from Clare as well. I just can't remember now. There was a Clare man there for a couple of years as well, and what was it? Donny Buckley. I think. Oh no, Donny Buckley was in it one year. Yeah, up in we played Connacht up in Ballyfourn or someplace up in Roscommon. We played them under lights. I think that might have been around 2006. Yeah, it was, yeah. The year we won the Railway Cup was 2008. And of course we played 2009 then, but we played Ulster in the final in 2009, and that was played in Ruislip, Oh, yeah. And we had quite a good game with them. And I remember we had a Waterford lad, Gary Hunley was full forward. And I remember the Tyrone lads were fascinated with him. Such a big, powerful man, and he was so skillful. I think he scored about 1-2 or 1-3 in that match. And the Garmin twins were playing in that as well. So they were They were two of the most skillful players that I came across. But we, down through the year, in the 5 or 6 years, but we took coaching serious too. We had some very good coaches in 07 there when we won the first championship match. I think it was back in 1988 was the last time Waterford had won a championship match before 07. I had Ned English, Ned English. Ned would be a really good football man. Ned was in to give us. I'll tell you a funny story. Before we played Clare, he found out that about the Monday night before we played Clare that they were playing Cork and Parky Ring in a challenge match. So he says to me, Jackson, he said, I'll meet you up around the city hall. He said, and we'll drive up. He said, we'll have to go under with the cloak and dagger job now. He said, we can't have the boys seeing us, And anyway, I sat in the Jeep with Ned. We went straight through the red lights. Hey, English, I said, you're just after going through the red lights. We came to the next one, it was green, and he stopped. But we eventually pulled in front of the entrance into Parky Ring anyway. And there was Paddy standing by the wall, and he waving at me. How are you, Jackson? What we going in? We didn't want anyone to see us. But anyway, Clare were well beaten. But I do that was Paddy's last championship match as manager in Fraher Field in 07. The poor fella, we had a.
This season, the show is brought to you by EIRGRID, official timing sponsors of the GAA All-Ireland Hurling and Football Championship, and key drivers in Ireland's pursuit of a cleaner energy. That day, John, yourself and Paddy were on the sideline. You told me that was the last day, the last championship match actually that Paddy ever managed any team on the sideline.
Yeah. When you look back on it now, which it's easy to be wise after, there was lots of other things that I would like to tell him all, but I did tell him a few times what I really did think, like he was a man I really admired, and he was, and I always felt better for having met him. He was a great character, and in his day he was a great player. And he just said to me on the line, and it was a terrible match. Jesus, Jackson, he said, this thing is as bad as it looks. I said, it's even worse. We shook hands after, and we had an old hug after the whole game, and we met up in the hotel after, and sure, we told a few yarns, and you know yourself, and that was it. And then we went on. We played G. He gave us a good bet, and we never got off the ground at all. And the game was televised, which made it twice as bad. I thought after giving you a good old run the year before, we might have, but things just didn't go for us on the day. We were shocked, a few lads with a few injuries. But anyway, we would have liked to give you a bit of a game. It was a day that, I think it was the day that, what's his name, got 2 goals. Owen Brosnan got 2. I think Owen Brosnan got 2 goals, yeah.
He had a desperate record actually scoring goals.
Yeah.
There would have been, down the years, John, you would have come across an awful amount of characters, and you strike me as a fella that you'd have a lot of friends around the country after it. Like, is that one of the big things out of the GA that we all link into, is the characters you meet and the friends you have everywhere?
They'd hardly a week go by, but I'd get an old phone call from some fella, like on the team now, the 5 years I was there, like I called in lots of coaches. I had a guy ever present called Michael O'Loughlin, who was from South Tipperary. Michael is a wonderful coach and had a great way with the players. Very good. Joe Purden from Rathgarmick. I liked him when he was playing as a player. He was a guy who taught a lot about the game. He was into stats and all that, which I wasn't really, to be honest with you. I was more in. I like watching horse racing, and I like looking at good horses running. You know what I mean? Do you see the way they daisy cutting actions, the way they float over the ground? I love to see a guy playing football that somebody like Declan O'Sullivan, who can solo with the ball left and right and is looking around. He's not looking at the ball. He knows. This is natural. It's absolutely natural. What a wonderful player. Kicked the ball over the bar. He didn't know which leg he was going to kick the ball with over the bar. That's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I'd like to teach. To be able to teach that to young guys, if you could get that into young fellas. Because it's a wonderful game. And there were lots of great coaches. And I got in a guy who was nominated for a couple of All-Stars with Kildare, and he's a wonderful coach. A guy called Paul McLaughlin, a big, strong lad. He was nominated, I said, twice for All-Stars. He lives down in Wexford now. And a hell of a nice fella, and he's a man's man. He's a very popular fella with the players. And we used to have on all the away games. We used to have the crack was the sleeping arrangements, because there was when the backroom team would be sleeping, if there was a room with a few beds in it, there was a few guys very loud, we'll say, snoring and stuff like that. So we used to have looking back, there was never a dull moment. It was.
Used to always make it home on a Sunday night after an away game, John? You did?
Depending how far away it was. Yeah, but we had another guy there I had a guy there from Cork, Brian Lottie, very good coach. John Cummins, Brendan Cummins' father. I had Colin Kelly down. Colin is a wonderful coach as well, and a great forwards coach. And very good, actually. It was he made a free taker out of Jason Ryan, because he gave him some great drills, how to train on his own, for the free taking. And Donny Buckley, of course.
Buckley was outstanding as a coach.
Outstanding. I think I was the first guy. I remember somebody wrote in the paper, "Who is Donny Buckley?" Some guy from the Cork Examiner or somebody asked me, "Who's the best coach you have ever seen?" And I said, he's a guy from Castle Island, and his name is Donny Buckley. And somebody wrote on some paper, "Who is Donny Buckley?" They were long finding out who Donny Buckley was, and he's an absolutely wonderful coach and a player's man as well. So Donny was down, and I got Donny involved in a few clubs like Ballinaccorty. He won a championship with them as well. And of course, he's a legendary coach. But he started off with Clare. He's working in Clare. He was the Clare County engineer down there. Yeah, a wonderful coach. Mickey Moran from Derry, John Morrison, the Lord of Mercy in him. He was a wonderful man as well. And Tony Scully, and meeting all people like that and formed great friendships. And former players, I got to know an awful lot of people in Kerry, Cork, everywhere. And it's great. That's the great thing about the GA.
You still travel, John, to all matches at the moment, would you?
Well, I'd go to the Munster football final. I'd go to the Cork Kerry games, yeah. I was often at Connacht finals and Ulster finals and stuff like that. I would have, it wouldn't bother me. I'd actually enjoy that, traveling away to
What do you make of the game, the modern game, as people say?
Well, it's a bit like, for the start, the guys are super fit. There's some fine athletes there, but they're an awful lot of the skills that are suffering. That I would like to see. I don't see too many people like Declan O'Sullivan playing the game. Do you know what I'm saying? I'd love to see a lot more of that real natural skill. There is some wonderful players there in the game today. I have no doubt about it. But the thing I would love to see midfield play brought into it, like the old midfield play, like when we had the ball being kicked out of the middle of the field, and you're somebody like Dara Ó'Sé or Stair Donaghy, or hey, we're
catching it, yeah.
Like
a lot of people would say that it's gone too defensive, but if you look, I don't actually mind. I don't know what you think. Yes, Derry play with a lot of fellas back and they tackle hard or whatnot, but by Christ do they attack at pace. It is a different game if you talk about the game that you saw when you were a young fella and you look at it now. But there are parts of it, I suppose, that are hard to watch, but most teams now realise that you can't be ultra defensive without actually breaking at pace. Do you think it's still hard enough to watch compared to the stuff that was there 20, 30 years ago? Or do you think there's a lot of things better in it as well?
No, of course there's a lot of things better in it, and it's football, and I love the game, and the goalie to kick the ball to a corner back or a wing back, and they start to move back in the full back line. But I know there is tremendous skill in it, as you say, and the ball is being punched. We'll say it's the safest way to pass the ball now at pace, and like the ball is walked from one end of the field to the other at breathtaking pace. Yes, there is no doubt about it. That wasn't in the game when I was a young lad back in the 60s or indeed in the 70s. And when you look back, you're looking at some of those old videos. You're talking about the old videos that are there in Croker, and you look at those. Now, certainly there were wonderful fetches and there were wonderful scores, but there was some desperate stuff as well. some desperate kicking, you know, where somebody just got the ball and kicked it for the sake of kicking it. There was an awful lot of that. There was an awful lot of bad stuff as well. But that was down to, I suppose, guys were doing physical work and they were fit to a certain extent, but not to the same degree as the guys are today, because guys today are on different jobs. You have school teachers who have plenty of time off. You have bank officials. You know, you don't see any builders or farmers. That's the thing now. That's kind of, you hardly ever see a farmer. You know, a farmer playing football at the highest level. You will at club level, but not at the highest level.
Do you think it's easier? Do you think it's easier for players to walk away from the game now than it was?
It is easier because it's easier to walk away because the commitment, it's a huge commitment, and young fellas today have a lot of, in today's world, there's a lot of pressure on young fellas today. If you're a guy going to college, you're under pressure to perform there for a job for the future. If you're a young married man, you have a family, you know what I mean? There's lots of things calling on young fellas. But it's wonderful to be able to get into that field and be able to train with your mates. It's like, that's the point that I made to them young boys that were playing for Waterford in the years that I was there. You know, when you look back in your time, you can say, look, I played football. I played it against some good players. I enjoyed it. I played for the county and I was fit. It's good for their mental health as well to be able to get to the field and train and play the game. It's good for young fellas. Of course, it's good for girls as well. And what I really enjoyed last year was that ladies' football final between me and Dublin. That was a super game.
It's brilliant, and the crowds that are going to it, the interest that's going into it, but the preparation at underage level is massive with it. Come here, John. Do you know and it's a kind of a strange question. Do you know, say sometimes you hear with the GA that they're pumping money into certain counties and they should be pumping more into other counties. Do you think that some counties, they need to have a balance of it in terms of getting maybe a bit more money, but using it the right way? Like, do you know, is the answer basically what I'm asking you? Is the answer pumping money in from the GAA, or is it bigger and wider than that?
Well, I've always believed that the answer is in coaching, good coaches, you know, and maybe having like I was involved in a committee in Munster for a good number of years there with Liam Hodnett from Cork and Tony Fitzgibbon from Limerick, and a lot of other well-meaning fellas, the late Noel Welch from Clare, you know. Yeah. And what we were basically at was trying to improve the coaching skill, and of course Pat Ó'Sé is a wonderful man and has done tremendous work for the Munster Council and for the Munster counties over the years. But I've always believed that the answer is in coaching, and there's lots of skills. And the late John Morrison, he used to have a wonderful piece in that, you know, the Gaelic magazine, the North, every week, and the amount of ways that a forward can get around the defender and the things that, you know what I mean. He had itemized every skill in Gaelic football, you know. Yeah. And it makes it. You know, it's a very, if you are a coach and you're interested if you could get hold of his manuscript and teach the game like the way he wanted to teach it, I would say you couldn't go far wrong. And the other one, of course, is Donny Buckley.
It's a skill. It's a skill in itself, John, isn't it? I mean, you could have great ideas inside your head, but the actual skill of coaching is getting it across to players, communication.
Absolutely, you have to have the people skills to get that across to the players. You could be the greatest player. You could be the greatest player of all time, but you mightn't have the skill to get that to get it into the players. It mightn't work. And same, you can see the same in soccer. You have some tremendous soccer players there, and they get a job there on millions worth of contracts with different clubs. Like Frank Lampard gone in there now, and I think maybe he's shooting above his head and shooting above. You know what I mean? I don't think. You know.
What would your philosophy be?
He was a great player. Because he was a great player doesn't mean he's a great coach. You know.
I know. Who are you telling? What was I going to say? Do you know what philosophy would you have with dealing with lads, John? You dealt with enough of them, and I know a lot of the lads that were under you had fierce respect for you and have fierce respect for you. What would your philosophy be in terms of it can't be all about getting every last drop out of them for the Basically, how do you get every last drop out of them?
Well, I suppose you would find out little things about all the lads, and about what makes them tick. Like it's impossible that you're going to have 26 or 30 guys on the panel and they're all the same. And they're not all the same, and they all have different interests, and and to be able to get inside their heads is what you're really to be, find out. After a training session, you might talk to one guy tonight, and tomorrow you'll talk to, and eventually you'll get around to them all. There are some guys that are going to fall through that you won't be able to get through to.
Yeah.
But
how did you deal with the cranky whore that wasn't getting his game?
Well, I told him the truth, and if he wasn't man enough to take it, well, then there'd be some other cranky whore coming.
You had and it was a great book. I remember it at the time because it wasn't really done, and the access wasn't there. But she had Damien Lawler, and he wrote a book on the Waterford footballers over the course of a year. Was it over the course of a year, John?
Yeah, he came in. He rang me at the end of 08, and he said he was thinking about writing a book about Waterford. Of course, I knew him for a good few years because he had written a story about us before we played Meath in the junior final in 99. And he said, Jackson, he said, I'm thinking about writing a book about you. I thought he was joking. So I said, listen, hey, Lala, I haven't time to be listening to you now, lad. I'm going to the book. So he came back to me the day after. He said, I'm not joking about that. He said, I want to write a book. He said, everybody's writing books about Kerry and Dublin and, all the top teams. He said, I just want to be a sort of a fly on the wall and follow you around to the matches and go to your training sessions and see what you're doing, And I think he said it's a book that might, it might do well. He said, I'd like to do it. So I said, okay, fair enough. So he came along, and there was no restrictions.
He had all access.
He had all access. We didn't. He had access to everything. Yeah, and came to all the training sessions. We had him at the matches, and I remember we were playing Sligo up in Markovich Park in 09, and it was a vital game. We had played well in the league that year, and if we beat Sligo, we were gone up. They were a pint ahead of us on the table, and if we beat them, we were gone up. And I think they had won the Connacht Championship the year before. Now, they were really good, and they had Eamon O'Hara playing midfield. And as you know, Eamon was a very good player. And at half time, we were leading by a pint half. It was a really good game. A good standard of a game. And the way you'd be looking for a nugget, come up with a nugget to tell a fella, you'd be looking at a few lads like maybe Tomás Ó'Sé or someone sitting in the line, you'd be saying, what am I going to say to this guy to get him going, or to keep him going? So I just say, hey, Lawler, I said, you'd have to be in a lot of dressing rooms over the years, and you'll have to write a lot of shite about GA and football. I said, man, say something there. And it was the only time in his life, he said, he was ever stuck for a few words. And the lads made a few, but he did. He said a few words in fairness to him. Yeah.
So you made him give the team talk. He wasn't expecting it.
No, he wasn't. No, but we went out then in the second half. We had a tremendous game with them. And I remember their goalie Philip Green he turned around a shot from Ger Powney at the end, and it just they beat us by a pint. But I remember Eamon O'Hara's response after he was asked by the local radio. They were delighted to have been promoted. And he just said he was absolutely knackered because he played his heart out. He said that was some effing game. It was a really good game, yeah.
Do you think the so-called weaker teams, John, that they get the exposure that they deserve? Could the GA be doing more for them? What do you think, for example, of the Tailteann Cup?
Well, I think it's good that the semi-finals and finals are going to be played in Croker.
Yeah,
I think it'll be better next year now. I think the competition, I'm really looking for, with the help with Touch Woods as a fellow, I'll be around next year, but I'm looking forward to the championship now next year with the top 16 teams and the four groups of four, So there should be some tremendous games. I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, I think we're going to have about 99 games in the championship next year, which is good. I'm not happy with the thing this year finishing in the month of July. I think they could have at least brought it up to August. Just too many games coming too quick. There's too many good games on the one day that I'd like to get to a couple of them if there was one on, you know what I mean? There's to just have to spread it out a little bit more, maybe, you know. But next year now we're going to have 90. I think it's 99 games. So I'm really looking forward to that. Actually, I think it'll be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I there's one thing that like the big teams again, and it is only, look, I'm involved with Offaly this year, and I see it's not the struggles of weaker teams, but when you have smaller teams, you have smaller squads. And when you have smaller squads, you're relying on everybody. And outside of injury then, John, if you have Sigerson in January, if you have the likes of the McGrath Cup in January, if you have the National League, which is the be-all and end-all for Division 3 and 4 teams, if you have an under-20 championship, and if you have an All-Ireland or a Munster championship after that, and an All-Ireland series after that, and the whole thing is squeezed into 6.5 months, it's very hard. It's for the weaker counties.
Of course, it's very hard. It's
very hard for every county.
It's very hard for every county. Of course it is, yes. And but at the end of the day, I know that the club, when you go back, when you're finished with the county, you go back to your club, and the clubs are important. But at the end of the day, the one that said the golden goose is the inter-county, isn't it? The football and hurling, the inter-county is the one. And it's just a pity that the bloody thing has been squeezed into a few weeks this year. You know, that's the way I view it. Like, I'm going to be there in August now. August is going to be wonderful, hopefully weather-wise, in September. But we're not going to have any inter-county activity again until those secondary competitions again next January. You know, so that's the bad part of it, actually, you know.
The argument to be made then that there is club action, that there will be big matches in club, but that's down to the county boards then to run them fairly fresh and fairly. You know what? I think we have a brilliant organisation, and I know we love giving out about it, like.
Yeah.
But when you see the likes of the Railway Cup gone, and I think Sigerson is a great competition, an unbelievable competition. The quality of football that you have there, it's very hard, isn't it, to get the proper calendar year, because even, you know, it's an awful problem for a lot of counties. It won't work in a lot of counties, say the Offaly's, the Corks, the Waterfords, because there's hurling and football strong in every one of those counties. Yeah. It's nearly, the dual player now, John, is nearly a dying breed at club level, isn't he?
Oh, he's absolutely. Even at club level, it's becoming it's a huge problem, you know. But like we here in Waterford, like we're in land area, we're the smallest county in Munster. And like the city, there's more than half the population of the county in the city, you know. And there's only one football club in the city, St. Saviour's, you know. There are other clubs there, there are a few other clubs there they've only played maybe Junior B, or, you know, I think there might be one under Junior A club there. And that's a huge, and like the big sport in the city, like maybe Ballygunner or on the outskirts of the city, Mount Sion, Moore and De La Salle, there's 4 or 5 hurling clubs there. But soccer is a big game in Waterford City, you know, the junior soccer clubs.
And I was going to ask, it popped into my head a while ago, and this is random enough now, but you were a big man for quizzes. You were on years ago when I was a young fella. Now I remember Where in the World. You were on Where in the World, weren't you?
God, you were very young when I was on that.
No, I don't remember. I don't remember you being on it, but I do remember, what was your one's name? Teresa Lowe.
Teresa Lowe, yeah. A good looking lassie, yeah.
You won it, John, yeah?
We won a trip to Australia out of it, yeah.
Did you go?
Oh, I did, yeah. We travelled the whole place, yeah. It was nice. It was a holiday of a lifetime, sure, yeah.
But you used to have quizzes then with the lads, the Waterford lads, maybe when you were on an away trip or something.
Oh, when we were on an away trip then, I'd organise it. We'd have an old quiz there. I'd make up a general knowledge quiz or maybe a sports quiz. So some of the guys would be, we'd say, would want a sports quiz. So what we used to do is divide up the lads so that we'd have 1 or 2 fellas that'd be good on the sports quiz on one team, or a guy that was good on literature or whatever in with him as well. So we used to have they used to have good competition, and I used to take a tenner a man off them, and the winners would have the cash, you know. for a few beers after the match, it all worked.
You'd be taking the cash off them, John, I'd say.
Yeah, I was in a program called Know Your Sport with lot of
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy McGee, yeah.
I remember that as well. Were you on that as well?
I was on that a few times, yeah, Jimmy, yeah.
They were great programs because it was all based on Irish stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were great, yeah. They were great. And yeah, well, that's there was another program going back a while called Cross Country Quiz. It was for Macron Firma. It was for the young farmers, yeah. And that was a good program as well with a guy called Peter Murphy. That was, But,
I'm going to wrap it up, John. It was brilliant talking to you. Unbelievable lifetime in the GA and the memories you have, and hopefully you'll have many, many more years of them. And thanks very much for coming on to the podcast. I'd like to thank EIRGRID for sponsoring it. And John, Garamila Maha, goodbye. And I suppose the last question I'll ask you before you leave is, who would you see winning the All-Ireland football final this year?
Well, I'd love to see Kerry win it because they have the greatest the greatest talent in the country at the minute, I think, in David Clifford. So I'd be tipping Kerry to win it, yeah. But I think Dublin will put up to him,
Yeah.
But hey, Tomas, before you go, I'd just like to say that over the years, lad, it's been a pleasure watching you and your two brothers and your uncle before you, and it was an absolute pleasure to be involved with the Munster team, and especially having you on the team. I really enjoyed that night in Portlaoise.
I did too, yeah.
And you're doing a great job on the TV, and I wish you the best of health and all the best for the future.
Garamila Maha, John. Thanks a million, bye. I appreciate it. All the best to you and yours as well, all right?
Come on, Tomas. Thank you.
Garamila, bye.
Yes, Tomas, look. Hey. Can you see that? Can you see that?
I can, boy. That's it. That's not the club jersey.
No, that's the Kerry one. My daughter wears that. She wears that at all year matches.
Thanks again to our sponsor, EIRGRID, official timing sponsors of the GAA All-Ireland Hurling and Football Championship, and key drivers in Ireland's pursuit of a cleaner energy future.